I used to think living by the lake meant peace. Coffee on the dock, loons calling at sunrise, the soft slap of water on wood. Then Denise showed up. Denise wasn't evil, exactly. She was just the kind of neighbor who believed the universe should bend around her schedule. She'd moved into the gray modern house 2 lots down, the one that looked more like a dentist's office than a home, and immediately started announcing her presence. Loudly. To everyone. I first met her when she marched up my driveway wearing aviator sunglasses and carrying a clipboard. She introduced herself like she was applying for a management position. "Hi, I'm Denise. I'm the new homeowner over at Sea Glass Cove. So listen, I've been told there's no public lake access here, which is inconvenient. So I'll just be using your dock, okay?" I thought she was kidding. I even laughed. She didn't. When I told her, no, that's private property, she did that thing where people smile without blinking. "Well," she said, "the lake is technically shared by everyone who lives around it, so I think it's fine." That was my first warning. The next morning, I found footprints on my dock. Wet ones. Then a beach chair. Then a full-sized inflatable swan. It wasn't subtle. I put up a short fence. Nothing dramatic, just a clean cedar boundary with a private property, no lake access sign. The kind you'd expect to do all the heavy lifting without an argument. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of crack. The fence was lying flat on the ground like it had lost a bar fight. My security camera caught her mid-mission. Flip-flops, sunglasses, and a pruning saw. She didn't even look guilty. That afternoon, she posted in the neighborhood group chat. "Some people think they can own the lake. Sorry, that's not how it works. Don't gatekeep nature." The post got 14 likes. I was ready to fume in silence and rebuild my fence, but then something strange happened. My old friend Mark, he's a surveyor, stopped by. He was measuring for a new dock project up the shore and laughed when I told him about the drama. "Funny thing," he said, tapping a map on his truck hood. "This lake's boundary lines are weird. When the subdivision was built, the developer split it unevenly. Your property line technically includes more shoreline than anyone else's. See here?" He pointed to a faded red border that zigzagged around the cove. "Half these people think they have lake frontage when they actually trespassing a few feet onto yours." It took me a moment to understand. "So you're saying Denise's dock?" He grinned. "Belongs to you." It was like finding out your neighbor's swimming pool was sitting on your patio. I spent the evening rereading my deed, cross-checking with the county GIS site, and calling the assessor's office. Mark wasn't kidding. My lot, bought years ago from an old fishing lodge, had been platted before the HOA even existed. That meant my property predated their lake regulations. It wasn't just mine. It wasn't theirs. So when Denise called the HOA president to complain that I'd blocked community access, the meeting that followed was chaos. They came marching down my driveway, Denise in front, HOA president behind her holding a printed rulebook like a priest with a Bible. "Sir," the president said, "we've had multiple complaints that you're restricting the shared shoreline." "It's not shared," I said. "It's in my deed. Want to see the map?" They didn't at first. They tried lecturing about fairness and community spirit. Denise smirked behind her sunglasses. That smirk made the next part even sweeter. I unrolled a copy of the county map on the hood of my truck. "This line here? That's the original lot. Everything from the birch tree to the point over there. That's mine, including that dock." Denise stopped smirking. The HOA president frowned. "That can't be right." "It's filed with the county," I said, "and your HOA wasn't incorporated until 3 years later, which means your bylaws don't apply here." The silence that followed was better than any fireworks show. Denise tried to recover with a nervous laugh. "You can't seriously mean—" "Oh, I do," I said, "and because your dock is technically on my property, I'm going to need you to move it by Friday." They left in a huff, muttering about checking with legal. I didn't expect them to actually follow through, but when Friday came, I heard hammering. I peeked out to see Denise and her husband dismantling the dock piece by piece. The lake was quiet again that evening. Sunset painted the water pink and gold. For the first time in weeks, I felt that peace return. Then, as I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee and feeling smug, I heard her voice echo across the water. "This isn't over." And from the look in her eyes, I knew it wasn't. For about 2 peaceful weeks, everything was calm again. The loons returned, the mornings were quiet, and I even rebuilt the fence. Taller this time. Cedar boards shining in the sunlight like a polite, no trespassing symphony. Then Denise made her comeback. It started with music. Loud music. I woke up one Saturday morning to the sound of a Bluetooth speaker blasting pop songs across the lake. Denise had set up her own makeshift dock, technically on the shoreline, but angled so it jutted right up to mine. She parked a pair of plastic Adirondack chairs there and a bright pink umbrella like she was running a lakeside cafe. When I walked down to my dock, she waved like we were best friends. "Morning! Great view from here." "Denise," I said slowly, "that's still on my property." She shrugged. "Oh, relax. It's just a few inches of water." "Technically, that's called trespassing." "Technically," she said, "you can't own the lake." I grinned. "Technically, you're right, but I can own the shore, which you're standing on." She rolled her eyes, put her sunglasses on, and turned up the music. That was the day I realized logic wasn't going to win. If I wanted peace, I needed strategy. The next HOA meeting was at their clubhouse, a big beige building with an overactive air conditioner and the smell of burnt coffee. I decided to go, mostly to see how deep the delusion ran. Denise was already there, whispering theatrically to anyone who would listen. When I sat down, the HOA president cleared his throat like he was announcing the State of the Union. "Mr. Collins," he said, "that's me. Several members have raised concerns about your fence and shoreline restrictions. It's been suggested that your property boundaries may need reevaluation to reflect community access guidelines." I smiled. "That's funny, because the county assessor already confirmed my lot line, and those guidelines don't apply to me." He shifted uncomfortably. "Well, the board feels it's in everyone's best interest to—" I cut him off. "I appreciate your feelings, but I prefer to rely on legal records, not opinions." The murmuring started immediately. I could feel Denise's glare burning a hole through the back of my head. That's when I dropped the bomb. "I actually met with the county land office last week," I said, pulling out a folder. "Turns out the original property deed for this section of shoreline, the one from the 1940s fishing lodge, includes not just my lot, but also the narrow strips of land between several others. The developer who sold to you all never properly subdivided them." The president frowned. "Meaning, what, exactly?" "Meaning," I said, "about 20% of this Lake-S shoreline still belongs to the old plat, and as of last Tuesday, I bought it." A collective gasp, a dramatic one too. Someone dropped their coffee stirrer. Denise's face froze mid-expression, halfway between disbelief and fury. "You can't buy the lake," she stammered. "Didn't buy the lake," I said cheerfully, "just the shoreline easements, which include, conveniently, your side dock and community beach area." There was a long, glorious silence, the kind of silence that has weight. Then came the shouting. The HOA threatened to look into this. They said words like unethical, unneighborly, and unprecedented. But paperwork beats passion every time. A week later, I got a call from their lawyer, polite, cautious, almost apologetic. He confirmed that after checking the land records, my claim was legitimate. That same afternoon, Denise came marching up my driveway again. No clipboard this time, just pure rage. "You think you can bully people with paperwork?" she said. "You can't just own everything because you found some loophole." "Loophole?" I said. "That's a strong word for reading my deed." She glared. "You're ruining this community." "I'm saving it from property disputes," I said, "and possibly a lawsuit." She looked like she wanted to throw something, but all she managed was, "You're unbelievable," before storming back down the driveway. The next weekend, I noticed something new. My once quiet cove had turned into a neighborhood standoff. People were suddenly whispering, measuring, pacing. A few started looking up their own deeds. One guy even knocked on my door with a six-pack and a nervous grin. "Hey, he said, Just wondering if my fire pit is technically on your land? Could be, I said. Depends on the map. He handed me a beer. Then here's to good neighbors. Word spread faster than gossip at a barbecue. Soon half the HOA was divided, not between me and them, but between everyone who didn't know where their land ended. It was chaos. Beautiful, bureaucratic chaos. And me? I stayed quiet. Calm. The lake was still, the sunsets perfect. The only sounds were loons and the occasional panicked measuring tape retracting. Denise, however, wasn't done. One night, my motion sensor camera caught her sneaking along the shoreline, flashlight in hand, muttering something about survey stakes. The next morning, I found orange paint marks near my dock. Amateur ones, crooked, uneven, like a child's art project. I sighed. She's really doing this, I muttered. But instead of calling her out, I did something better. I called Mark, my surveyor friend. Feel like making a map that'll end all maps? I asked. He chuckled. For you, always. What we did next was legal, simple, and, if I'm being honest, a little bit brilliant. Mark showed up the next morning in his old pickup, survey rods rattling in the back. He had that grin he always got when bureaucracy was about to meet geometry. So, he said, we're making art? More like clarity, I said, though we both knew I was enjoying this more than I should. We started at dawn. He planted bright neon stakes every few feet, each one hammered in with a satisfying thunk. The lines curved along the shoreline, through the cattails, across the gravel drive. When we finished, my property looked like it had been wrapped in high-visibility Christmas lights. From my porch, you could see the pattern clearly. Every fence, dock, and fire pit that had crept over the line now sat half inside my newly defined border. It wasn't petty. It was precise. By noon, Denise had noticed. She came marching down the hill in a visor and yoga gear, fury radiating off her like heat. What is all that? You can't just stick flags wherever you want. I handed her a laminated copy of the updated survey. Official record stamped by the county. Mark filed it this morning. Her jaw tightened. You filed it already? Same-day service, Mark said cheerfully. Denise snatched the paper, scanned it, and jabbed at a line. That's impossible. This says my patio is on your property. Mark nodded. About 3 feet of it, yeah. Right here where you painted your dog's name on the stones. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she turned and stormed off without another word. That evening, I sat on the dock, watching the last orange light fade across the lake. I thought maybe, that would finally end it. But the next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from the HOA board. Emergency meeting. Shoreline issue escalation. Of course. I went. They'd printed out the survey map on a projector. Denise sat in the front row, arms folded like a courtroom witness. The president cleared his throat. Mr. Collins, the board feels this survey is overreaching. It's certified, I said. If you want to challenge it, you'll have to file through the county. He hesitated. That could take months. Then you'll have months of peace to think about it, I said. Denise slammed her notebook shut. You think you can bully everyone with paperwork, but guess what? We're forming a subcommittee to petition for community shoreline access. You'll have to allow it if we get majority support. I raised an eyebrow. Majority support from people who just learned half their lawns are on someone else's deed? Murmurs rippled around the room. A few homeowners suddenly found the ceiling very interesting. The meeting ended in silence. 2 weeks passed. The petition never materialized. Most of the neighbors quietly accepted reality. Some even thanked me for clearing up the boundaries. Then one day, a county envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a notice. Public auction. Foreclosed shoreline lot. It was a narrow strip on the opposite side of the lake, once owned by a defunct developer. Barely 60 feet wide, overgrown, worthless to anyone but someone who already owned adjacent water rights. I called the clerk. So, whoever buys that controls its access point? Correct, she said. You planning to bid? I might, I said, trying not to sound too eager. The auction was tiny. 5 people in a bland municipal room with bad coffee. Denise wasn't there, but an HOA representative was. He nodded stiffly when he saw me. Bidding started at $8,000. The HOA rep raised his hand. I raised mine. We went back and forth, 9, 10, 11. At $12,500, he hesitated. I added another 50 just to be polite. Sold. When the papers cleared, that forgotten slice of mud and reeds officially joined my holdings. It didn't look like much, but according to the map, the HOA's beloved community dock extended exactly 6 feet into that property, which meant, well, you can guess what it meant. Mark laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee when I told him, "You really do own the whole shoreline now." "Technically just both sides," I said. "But yeah, close enough." "You're going to tell them?" "Eventually," I said, staring out at the water. "I think they'll notice." It didn't take long. The next Saturday, as families gathered at the community beach, a bright new sign appeared. "Private property. Trespassers will be cited." Courtesy of the county, legally correct, freshly laminated. The HOA president called within the hour, his voice tight. "Is this your doing?" "Just protecting my land," I said. "You know how particular boundaries can be." He sighed audibly. "What will it take for you to share access?" That was when the idea arrived. Calm, clean, and profitable. I told the HOA president to come by that afternoon. He arrived with Denise in tow, both of them looking like they were heading to court rather than a lakeside chat. We stood at the end of my dock as the wind rippled across the water. I could see Denise trying not to look impressed at how still the lake was that morning. Mirror flat, gold light on the surface. "Let's skip the posturing," I said. "You want access, and I want quiet. We can both have what we want if we act like adults." Denise folded her arms. "You're not exactly giving adult energy right now." I ignored that. "I talked to the county. They're fine with me leasing limited shoreline rights, provided liability is clear. So here is my offer. The HOA can rent access to the community dock for a symbolic fee." The president frowned. "A fee?" $10 a year, I said. "Flat, but it's written into a proper easement. You maintain it. You insure it. You follow noise restrictions. You break it, you fix it." Denise laughed, sharp and short. "You're actually charging us?" "Charging you less than a pizza," I said. "Think of it as formal peace." The president took the papers, reading carefully. I watched his expression shift from suspicion to relief. For all his bluster, he was tired too. "This is reasonable," he admitted. Denise glared at him. "You're not actually considering—" He cut her off gently. "Denise, we can't keep fighting this. It's legally solid." She looked between us, frustrated, then snatched the pen from his hand and signed the copy herself. "Fine," she snapped. "But I'm keeping my chair on the dock." "As long as it's on your $10 lease," I said with a smile. For a few weeks after that, everything calmed down again. The sign stayed up, the dock stayed open, and the neighborhood found a new balance. Denise still gave me side-eye from her kayak, but the music stopped and the fence stayed upright. I thought that was the end of it, until the local paper called. Apparently, someone at the county office had mentioned the homeowner who bought half the shoreline, and now a reporter wanted a quote. I met him on the dock one morning. "Not much to tell," I said. "I just read my deed carefully." He chuckled. That's the kind of understatement our readers love. 2 days later, the story ran. Man discovers lake ownership loophole, turns HOA into tenant. The headline went mildly viral. My quiet little lake was suddenly famous, at least for a week. I got emails from strangers saying I was a hero, a genius, a menace, a symbol of justice. One even asked if I was hiring. Denise didn't talk to me for 2 months. When she finally did, it was almost friendly. She stopped by with a folded copy of the article. "You enjoying your 15 minutes?" she asked. I shrugged. "Not really. I liked it better when nobody knew my name." She leaned against the fence, the one she once sawed through, and looked at the water. "You know, she said quietly. I still think the lake should be for everyone, but I also think you might be the only person I've met who actually earned it. That was about as close to a truce as we were ever going to get. Months passed. The seasons turned, the tourists left, and the lake froze over in clean silver lines. I walked the shore some mornings, coffee in hand, watching ice mist rise off the water. The markers were still there, little orange flags poking through snow. They looked absurd now, reminders of how big small fights can feel when you are standing too close to them. Mark stopped by one afternoon, parking his truck halfway up the drive. Still king of the shoreline? He asked, grinning. Caretaker, I said. King sounds exhausting. He laughed, then looked at the lake, his breath fogging. You ever going to sell it? Not a chance, I said. This place reminds me to read things carefully and keep copies. He chuckled. Only you could turn a property dispute into a philosophy. By spring, the fence had weathered to a soft silver gray. Wildflowers grew at its base. I rebuilt the gate with a new sign, smaller this time, carved by hand. It didn't say no trespassing anymore. It said, read the deed. People still came by to ask about it. Some laughed, some just nodded. Denise's husband even stopped one evening to say they were redoing their patio, on their side of the line this time. The world moves fast, but lakes move slow. And when the sun drops low enough to turn everything to gold, it's easy to forget the arguments and remember why I came here in the first place. The quiet, the reflection, the feeling that peace, like property, is mostly about knowing where the boundaries are. The lake's still mine on paper, but in truth it belongs to everyone who respects it, even Denise. And every now and then, when the light hits the water just right, I can almost hear her voice drift across the calm. This isn't over. I just smile. You're right, I whisper back. It never is.